Welcome to Tech Talks. Today we have Omon. Omon is the founder of Blue Mahagony. Blue Mahagony is an interior design outfit that brings your dreams to reality. Omon, thank you for coming onto Tech Talks.
Thanks for having me.
So, the first question, and always the most interesting question is, Blue Mahagony is like, how many years now?
2006, so just almost 14.
So, 14 years ago, and when you started this, how did it start? Why did it start? What were the challenges? I'm sure you have some very interesting stories.
Okay, so I'll start with 15 years ago. So at the time, I was actually a PhD student at University of London, Royal Holloway. I was on a scholarship doing research in petroleum law and policy. So the plan was that I would come back home, I would influence policy, I would be super rich in the oil industry.
As you do.
As you do. I'd be walking around in power suits and high heels. And it was an interesting picture, but I just knew deep down that path was not the right fit for me. So I think I was about 2/3 the way through the PhD. I had just less than a year to go. And I dropped out. And I decided to start that journey of discovering what my true passion was.
Because your parents were very comfortable with this, Nigeria girls.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The first question my dad asked was, "Are you pregnant?" I'm like, "No." So initially it was difficult for them to swallow. It's like, what do you mean? What is interior design? You want to become a contractor, making curtains? What's that? So it took a little bit of convincing my parents that it was the right decision. Actually, my dad, that it was the right decision. But I just knew it was the right fit for me.
How did you win over people? How did you build your credibility?
Okay. So my very first client actually did not pay a lot of money. They paid me £20 and a bottle of red wine. Those were my fees for designing their home. But I was thankful for it because at the time what I was looking to do was build a portfolio, build a track record that I could come to people with and say, despite this small girl facade, here's what I've done earlier. So my first few years were literally just about taking any and every job that came my way. The idea was that I would get to a point where I wouldn't have to walk through the door and spend the first 10 minutes convincing you that, I was the right person for the job.
How do you intend to scale? And scale means like if you have 20 jobs, you can't be in 20 places at the same time. What kind of people or what kind of solutions are you thinking of how are you going to use technology to be able to scale and meet the demand and still yet have that Blue Mahagony, founder quality that people have come to trust?
Absolutely agree with you. As a designer, creating spaces should not be about copy and paste. I feel very strongly that every project that I work on has a little bit of my heart and soul in it. It's very intense and involved. So the issue really is not so much talent. I guess when you're talking about succession planning and all of that and scaling, it's not so much talent, but it's also finding and building a team of people that can run projects, right? So I'm very open and I'm very inclusive with my team. I encourage people to think for themselves. I encourage them to make mistakes. I encourage them to learn from my mistakes. Education, or should I say learning, is and has always been a big passion for me. If you go back, like I said, 15 years, I was all about the research and all of that. So I do believe very strongly that knowledge is power, right? So with IDA, we created a new initiative called Guide for Business. Now, the idea behind Guide for Business is providing training and a resource base for creative entrepreneurs. In the next couple of years, education is at the forefront of our key initiatives, and we will be working with a couple of universities and one or two private institutions to develop curricula for formal training of interior design, because that's an area that is still very much lacking. I remember when I wanted to retrain and become a designer, there was literally no school in Nigeria where you could study design. And it was so for, I guess, another 10 years or so while I was in the industry. Most people who had the professional, the formal training, had to leave the country, and that should not be the case. If we're trying to breed a crop of design professionals that can achieve heights greater than we have achieved now or that we could ever become, I feel that solid foundation of education, training, and continuous learning, that's the legacy I'm hoping to leave behind.
That's fantastic. And most of your members are small businesses.
Absolutely.
And part of not just being very good technically, but also making sure that you have those support systems to ensure that you can focus on your work. So
Absolutely.
things like marketing, HR, those are the kind of things that you want to enable your colleagues in that industry.
Yes, because there are a lot of people who go into interior design purely because they have a passion, they feel they're creative, etc., and they jump into it without the business sense or learning all the other skills that come with running a sustainable business.
And that leads me to my last question, which is part of that changing world, the future of work, the future of the home, as robots begin to take over jobs, as people, especially the new generation, decide that working in a classroom setting or a typical office setting is not their cup of tea. They want to work flexible hours. They don't want to come to work at all if they don't need to. So it means that for new businesses, there must be a redesign of what the work is. And if you look at the home as well, people are not leaving home anymore. I know when I was young, I couldn't wait to get out of home. Now, everybody, parents are more worldly, so to speak, so everyone is staying at home much longer. How does that affect design of office? How does that affect design of home? And how do you see that from a relearning perspective, especially for interior designers? How are you going to grasp or ride this new changing landscape?
Constant learning is absolutely critical because things are changing so fast. You could be, in the blink of an eye, you're still buying postage stamps. Meanwhile, people are sending emails just by blinking, right? It's important to just constantly be aware of what's going on. I hear what you say about robots taking jobs, but I think there will always be that human element that is absolutely important. In fact, I will never take on a project without having met the individual that we're designing for one-on-one, because there's so much you can read from a person just by having a conversation. Like in 5 minutes, you can tell a lot. I'm not sure that they're designing robots yet that have that level of intelligence. I think the future is freedom of time, it's freedom of place, it's freedom of space, right? So people are demanding more. People are demanding that their spaces work for them differently. Somebody wants to be able to collaborate 1 minute, the next minute they want a quiet corner where they can work on their own. I feel as a people we're traveling a lot more now than we used to, right? So people are coming back with a level of exposure which informs an increased demand and expectation of what should be available, right? What should be possible. Now, that's all well and good. All the client has to say is, this is what I want my space to do for me. As a designer, we are then thinking on the back end. We're thinking about acoustics. We're thinking about ergonomics. We're thinking about adaptability. We're thinking about integrating technology, about sustainability, right? So because we've designed the space at the time, we'd use whatever was the latest technology. A couple of years, it could be obsolete, but you don't want to have to rebuild your space from scratch. So that space should be able to adapt and grow and change as your lifestyles and your work styles change.
Omon, thank you very much for coming on to Tech Talks. It was very nice talking to you, and we'll continue the conversation offline.
Awesome.
Thank you.